Everyone hear me? Is there people in the back? It's very bright, I can't see much of it, to be honest. Okay, a little bit louder? Does this work? Okay, perfect, perfect. If you have some trouble hearing at some point, let us know that we should speak up. Yeah, okay, thank you everyone for coming to this event. Who should we vote for now? Or what should we vote for now, really? I'll first get started with... Yeah, a little bit louder? Is this good? Okay. So thank you everyone for coming. I first want to get started by just thanking AlHamra, which is where we are right now. They lend us this space for free, so please buy some drinks or food or whatever from them. They're really great people. It's very rare to find pro-Palestine places in Berlin, and even rarer to find Palestinian-owned places in Berlin, so please support them as much as you can. We will get started soon. I just have a couple of announcements. In the back you will find the Gaza-Comité and Socialisme van Unte that have some flyers, information, so give them a look if you can. We, the Left Berlin, are a volunteer-based organization, so I will at some point, or, well, not me, someone will pass out a newsletter sign-up sheet with more information, but also if you want to donate, that would be great so that we can keep events like these going. It's not often that you get a free space, so it's pretty great. Then there is 2 demonstrations on Saturday that we just want to highlight. The first one is Demonstration gegen die Kürzungspolitik des Berliner Senats, which is at 2 o'clock at Rotes Rathaus. And the second one is okay, I think that one was not on Saturday, but I was told it was. It's on the 22nd. This one is actually on Saturday. It is at 2 o'clock. It's für einen gerechten Frieden in Palästina und Israel, das Toten endlich beenden, Waffenexport stoppen, which is at Bundeskanzleramt Spreebogen Park at 2 o'clock on Saturday. I hope to see you all there. We will be there. You will be there. And I will now pass it on to Jen here, who will read out our awareness statement on behalf of the Left Berlin. There will be people who have ordered drinks which will show up, so please just be aware that there might be people walking around. If you do have like a bag on your seat or an empty seat, maybe move it so we have more space. There is like a little bit more space here at the front, not much, but try to find space. All right, thank you.
Thank you. I could just step up here. Hi everybody, my name is Jen and I will be your awareness team tonight. I would like to say a couple of words about the Left Berlin and the awareness team. The Left Berlin is an independent collective of international political activists who place the rights of people before the needs of profit. We recognize that capitalism relies on and intersects with a variety of oppressions like sexism, racism, ageism, ableism, homophobia, and transphobia. Therefore, we take inspiration from socialist, queer, and transfeminist decolonial visions of the world. Doesn't that sound great? And our awareness team was established to challenge expressions of oppression, and so we don't tolerate any form of discrimination or violence. However, we do want to be a place where solidarity is the focus, and we focus on prevention so that we can foster care, justice, and growth. So if someone offends you or you feel harmed, please, the person should be open to criticism, respect the affected person's point of view, and learn from the mistake. We are committed to centering the needs and safety of the affected persons in case of harm. If you experience discomfort due to someone's actions or comments tonight, please let me know, or also maybe, Kipka or someone else. We'll be around during the whole event. And I also just want to say, this is sort of off the cuff, but there has been a mammoth volunteer effort to get this thing going tonight with very few people involved, and I want to say thank you to you, thank you Phil, thank you to the Film Collective who is here recording this, and there's also other people, I didn't name my person, but really thank you so much for organizing everything.
All right, thank you so much, Jen. Also want to give a quick shout out to Yasmin here, who is my co-host and will be helpful as well with the discussion later. Yes, so to get started, we will first do a quick introduction speech at the beginning, and I'll just start directly on my left, if that's okay, with Daniel Kipka-Anton. Right, perfect. And I will pass the mic to you, and if you want to get started, and then we will go one by one. Yes.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the invitation. Two sentences to start with. My English has turned a bit rusty since high school, so please be kind when it comes to that, and please ask if anything should not be comprehensible. So yes, my name is Daniel. I'm a member of Die Linke Neukölln. I was a long-standing member of the regional or district board in Neukölln, and yeah, I think one of the persons who tried to push the issue of Palestine solidarity within Die Linke. So yeah, thanks again for having me. Yeah, I think we can all agree that we are dealing with an extremely polarized political and social situation, not only in Germany, but of course globally. In my brief 15 minutes, I will try to explain why I still believe that Die Linke is the right choice, and why also that choice in the election is not nearly enough. So I want to start with the experiences of the last weeks in the election campaign in Neukölln, because it was quite empowering, to be honest. Okay. Is it possible to turn it down a little? Yeah, okay. Okay. Does that work? Do you still hear me? Okay. For a left party in one of its deepest crises, early elections were not good news, of course. The polls had been bobbing around between 2.5 and maybe 4% for a very long time. And at the same time, there has been a notable dynamic since the separation from Sarah Wagenknecht, and thousands of new members have flocked to the party. I don't want to give an assessment of the content of the separation, but for many people it was undeniably the one reason to join the party. This trend began with poor poll results and has not abated since then. On the contrary, in Neukölln we are fighting with Ferhat for the first direct mandate for Die Linke in the Western constituents. You know what I mean. And in our last campaign weeks, this attracted a total of 1,200 people from all over Germany. On the strongest days, 640 people were on door-to-door canvassing. And since the start of the hot campaign phase, we have knocked on 100,000 doors in Neukölln, held over 30,000 conversations, and registered around 10,000 pledges to vote for Ferhat or Die Linke. The Left Party now has 81,000 members, more than ever before in its history. Of course, these bare figures alone don't say anything at all, don't get me wrong, but I think that this dynamic is a product of social conditions and a certain set of tools at a grassroots level. Let's start with the social developments. To start with, I think we quickly forget, unfortunately, especially during election campaigns, that this capitalist system is in a great, great crisis, and above all, in its most dangerous crisis in decades. The imperialist rivalry has progressed so far that it is no longer considered insane to claim that a third world war could break out at any time. And in my view, this geopolitical situation is also one of the stages on which the breaking of the Ampelkoalition took place. In fact, I think the debate about the debt break, the Schuldenbremse, was a bit of a disruptive fire, because we are talking about a coalition of parties that all have and never had any problem with austerity politics. And almost the entire landscape of parties in Germany is also united when it comes to further support for Ukraine and billions in armaments, with the Greens even calling for 3% of gross domestic product to be invested in the military. So that can't be the reason either for the breaking up of the coalition. From my point of view, we have to take into account the sad prospects of the German economy and the interests of the German capital factions, which in my view, as almost always are, lowering social security contributions, cutting wages and salaries, actually nothing more or less than Agenda 2040, so to say, another huge attack on the welfare state. I don't think that the Social Democrats, the SPD, would survive another agenda policy despite its endless history of antisocial policies. And this is where the Merz-CDU enters the stage, which has no problem implementing this systematic social dismantling and is running with exactly that. This is flanked, of course, by an almost unprecedented shift to the right in Germany. There's no space here for an in-depth analysis of the Nazis of the AfD. However, I think that the last few weeks have shown once again, in particular, that the CDU and AfD are passing the ball to each other and shifting the supposed taboos even further in the direction of fascism. I think everyone in this room realizes that the firewall, the Brandmauer, is perhaps an important image to draw attention to the urgency of anti-fascism in Germany, but of course it has long since developed extremely wide cracks. I'm not just referring to the actual joint vote with the AfD in the Bundestag 2 weeks ago, but the insane shift to the right in the prevailing politics, the competition to outdo each other in terms of deportations, and the massive top-down anti-Muslim racism in this society. Because that was also one of your questions. Despite this overall political shift to the right, I think it is extremely dangerous to treat the AfD as just another of the deportation parties, another of the neoliberal parties. The AfD's deportation plans are quantitatively a completely different matter and such a massive danger that we must also form alliances, sadly, with members of some of the parties that are participating in this shift to the right. The AfD is holding a gun to all our heads, and we must join forces to stop the fascists, and at the same time continue to criticize and fight the prevailing policies. Of course, a genuine system-critical opposition would help, and this brings us to the sometimes difficult issue of Die Linke. I'm not here to defend the party in its fundamental character as a left-wing reformist and parliament-fixated force. Many of us know the systemic limits of such an approach. I'd say it anyway, it's clear to me that Die Linke will never be the force that fundamentally changes capitalist society. By definition, it cannot. Conversely, this does not mean that there are no developments that we need to criticize. The left has become large and successful as the organizational expression of the movements against the Hartz IV reforms. In many places it was a social democratic force of protest in the best sense of the word, and a historic achievement, I'd say. For the first time since the KPD, since the Communist Party in Germany, tens of thousands in Germany organized themselves to the left of social democracy. However, the mills of parliament, the constraints of conformity, all of this was to some extent inherent, but it also had an effect and development. And I would say, especially since the major crisis of this decade, the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and the genocide in Gaza, Die Linke has often failed to position itself as a systematic opposition, and has often enough been even a left-wing flank defense for the various governments. This became particularly clear with October the 7th and the situation in Palestine. Not only did the left fail to name the genocide as such, it did not even manage to position itself clearly in favor of the minimum demanded ceasefire for a very, very long time, and was therefore unable to be any support to the movement. The symbolic low point of this development for the time being was, of course, the exclusion of Ramsi, in my opinion, a scandalous and wrong move in which Ramsis still has my full solidarity and that of my district association. I can't go into details, but of course this development is nothing new either. The forces of Staatsräson have been influencing parts of the left for a very long time. So why, after all that I've mentioned, should you still vote and be active in Die Linke? The short answer, I believe that Die Linke is still the one relevant left-wing mass organization whose development continues to be contested and in which thousands of comrades are joining and have joined, who can be won over for a perspective that points beyond capitalism. The development of the left has, as I said before, certain systemic limits. This does not mean that everything between these limits is rigid. I would argue, for example, and here we may also have a controversy, that Ramsis' expulsion was not a sign of strength of the forces of certain currents in the party, but a sign of weakness. And I would say that starting from Neukölln, in the meantime, a large number of district associations and also on a much lower level, the State Association of Die Linke in Berlin now have different majorities when it comes to the question of Palestine and Israel. This is rightly judged from the outside to be too slow and too little, but it is an achievement when you consider where we come from a national organization where the issue of Palestine would have had no chance of being discussed at all until 2 or 3 years ago. I would also like to report on the practical side of the election campaign in Neukölln. I have already mentioned that we have held many thousands of door-to-door conversations. The top 3 issues on people's minds were rents, public transport and street littering, but of course we also spoke to many people in Neukölln about Palestine. And the one thing which became very clear to me during canvassing for Die Linke Neukölln and our clear stance on the issue of Palestine are being noticed, and conversely the failure of the party as a whole on the issue as well. But it has also become clear to me in recent months we are not alone in the party in Neukölln. There is a clear movement within the party, and what has long since arrived in society and has long since turned something in the German population through movements such as Black Lives Matter and the Palestine movement, of course. I'm thinking of the clear polls against Israel's policies and arms deliveries. It finally has arrived in the party in terms of content and personnel. It is agonizingly and frustratingly slow, no question about that. But I am simply seeing hundreds of people joining the party who not only want to do something against the AfD and Friedrich Merz, but for whom it goes without saying that solidarity is not selective. There are many, albeit still far too few, people with a history of migration and BIPOCs among those new members, and this still poses a task for the party as a whole. Can I give an unconditional recommendation to vote for Die Linke? No, and I would say I've never been able to do so, partly because, and that's a very important point, because I'm convinced that voting in general is only a fraction of the social change we actually need. But for me personally, despite all the frustration, I couldn't imagine being on the sidelines of this dynamic within the left, within Die Linke. I think the fight for Die Linke and the fight for positions and heads is still there, and we should lead it as socialists. What we need to make very clear anyway, and this is my inadequate answer to the question of how people without passports can become active, is that elections are really only a fraction, and that we need to build a party that has an everyday practice away from the circus of elections and parliament. A party that has clear positions and can also at the same time win practical battles and majorities. And this is precisely what we are trying to show with Die Linke Neukölln's campaign. This is what we mean by doing politics differently. Not everything is going perfectly, but the developments I've described to you are giving me hope for the first time after years of frustration, and I look forward to the debate with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now next we have Mary Alice Morel from Mary 25.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone organizing this. Thank you for the Left Berlin for having us. I also want to quickly introduce us, explain to you who Mera 25 is. I would like to give a few arguments of why I think it is important to vote for us. And then I would like to also address the elephant in the room, which is a question that we get a lot recently, and this is why should you vote for us over Die Linke? So I didn't want to wait until you asked me the question. I thought I'd give you some answers already, and then we can discuss it. So first of all, who's Merit 25? Merit 25 is a party that, the movement, it belongs actually to movement DiEM25, which started in 2016. And or was officially registered in 2016. It started already much earlier with the Greek financial crisis and everything, but I'm not going to bore you with all of this. It's interesting that it started in 2016, and a few years later, the movement decided, okay, we want to influence politics, we want to influence political parties that are out there, but it's not really working for us. So the solution was to found their own parties, and that is what Merit 25 is. Merit 25 exists, they started in Greece. They also were in parliament there before. Right now we're running as a party here in Germany for the Bundestag elections. We have a party in Italy. We're about to form Merit 25 in the Netherlands. We have a party in Sweden. So we're growing, and so that's kind of basically where we're at right now. We have currently in Germany 11 federal boards, so 11 Landesverbände, and we're running in 3 federal states, which is here in Berlin. We have 14 list candidates. Then we're also running in Bremen and in North Rhine-Westphalia, which we're very proud of. It was very hard to collect all these signatures. It was a great effort from all our volunteers, but we made it, and also especially in Berlin we made it very strong, and that shows us a lot how many active volunteers and how much energy and potential there is in Merit 25. And why it is important to vote for us? Well, first of all, and to explain also a little bit more, we're, as I said, more than just a party. And it's not only that we're saying, oh, we're part of a movement, but that means that has practical consequences. So actually our policies, our political policies are decided on movement level. So that means that, for example, our stances on migration, our stances on climate change, our stance on Palestine, that is voted by all DiEM members. All members in Europe, all members even globally get to vote on our policies, and that is very good. And that showed, for instance, when the 7th of October came and we had to position ourselves because we had a movement. We already positioned ourselves a few years ago. We had a policy paper, how we feel about this two-state solution, how we feel about the state of Palestine. We already lobbied against apartheid, everything. And so when it became here for the party, a situation where they were like, okay, how we're going to position ourselves. I mean, they knew how they're going to do it, but obviously there was a little bit of fear of how this whole thing is going to play out in Germany, right, in a country that has such a strong stance against Palestine. We had a strong movement behind us that said, no, you know what's right, you know what's principled, and you have us behind us, and that's why you're going to make this decision. And that was the best decision that the party could do here. And I think that is really something to highlight that makes us very different from any other party. The fact that, and that comes also back to how people who are who don't have German citizenship, how they can become active, is to join our movement. You can directly impact our policies. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're a member of DiEM25, you influence our politics. A lot of things are being discussed on that movement level, and it's also very important for us that we're first and foremost movement member, and then we're a political party. So basically, in a very easy way to say is like, if this whole party politics thing doesn't work out with everything, and we decide that this was a failed project, we still are going to be part of our movement because our movement is what matters most. And that's also connecting to what you just said. Politics is not only done in parliaments, it's done on the streets, and that's why it's really important that we have this integral movement within our structures, and that we also implement and improve structures in democratic ways, that we can always make sure that the people in the movement are heard, and that people who are not directly involved in party politics have a voice. So that is the first thing that I wanted to say about the way how we operate. And then, as I said, that directly links us that we have very strong and consistent and principled stances on especially Palestine. I think it is very important to vote for a party that is bold enough to take that stance, to support a party that is bold enough to take that stance, and to show other parties what the consequence is of lacking solidarity, of dropping people for catering to the broader mass and catering to those who we might be a little bit scared or unsure about. This is really important to us, and I think it's very important to vote for a party that stands for that. And then finally, we often get the question, of course, like, are you going to make 5% this election? What is the point to vote for you if you don't? It's very important that we get party financing that comes with 0.5%. And we're not that far away from that. There's a real chance that we can reach that. And the point why I'm trying to argue with, or why I'm trying to highlight this is that fighting fascism, fighting authoritarianism is not done by one election. What often happens is that once we get closer to elections, we all get panic and then we're like, okay, now we have to make decisions that are gonna somehow save us from all the mistakes that we made before or from like worse things that are happening. But that's a bit of a, at least I feel like a bit of a easy perspective on what's happening right now. I mean, especially the people who have been active on Palestine in the last years, but also the last 15 months, they know that we're fighting this fight already, right? Like we're fighting for ground every day. There's a lot of politics and policies that are going against us that are already implementing fascist and authoritarian positions. So it's also a lot about what we do in between these years, in between when there's no elections, when politics becomes almost obsolete. And that's what we need financing for, to build each other in these years, to build each other up. And this is a very important election. I don't want to deny that, but it also is very important what comes after, how strong we are afterwards, and what we get to build for also the next election. Because right now it looks like that the AfD might be able to form a coalition. They're not going to be the strongest party, at least that's what the predictions say. But that cannot save us, and that will certainly not save us in 5 years if we don't start to become active, if organizations like Merit 25 or other organizations don't have the push and the means and the capacities to build a strong left foundation right now. So to come to the last 3 points, to the elephant in the room of why, let me say, I want to go into 3 main arguments that we often hear, and I think it's worth to point them out already and then to see how you all feel about it, so please debate me on it if you think it. And the first one is that Merit 25 is splitting the left. The fact that we exist means that we're dragging votes away from the Linke, and that we're basically taking away members, and it would just better if we don't do that. The problem is that the Linke is not splitting itself by us existing, it's splitting itself with bad politics. And most of the members actually that are leaving the Linke is because of these bad politics, and they're actually not going to us, they're going to BSV. Many people in our party have become active for the first time. That's also actually something that is very, very unique and special about us, is that there's a lot of people, a lot of activists who have decided, okay, I know this is reformist, but I need to do something. There's a lot of people who maybe felt alienated by politics that are joining us right now. That gives a very different perspective on things. Also the way how we want to do things. We do not want to run like traditional classical parties. Of course, in a certain way we have to, right? We still have to collect signatures and have boards and everything like that. But I think the fact that we're not trying to implement something that we have learned somewhere else, not trying to implement structures that we maybe have become frustrated before, but now trying to kind of fit into what Mera is a big advantage. I think, so the people who basically are in our party, they're very, almost a lot of them are very new to politics. And we're not taking any new members away, we're creating something new, and I think that is great. And then also especially consistent and principled politics on peace will be a key issue moving forward. So I understand that right now it feels like we need to make a final decision, but we need a party that can take principled stances continuously and that will be able to be bold enough to hold these stances. And that is something that we stand for, and that's why I think it's important to support us. Voting for Merit 25 is often said that it is a lost vote, especially like right now with the AfD coming up. Vote for us is basically a vote for the AfD, because how are we going to prevent the AfD, right? Not being in parliament or anything like that. I want to say to that right now everyone is in the left is losing, right? We don't have a strong stance against the left. The AfD is gonna win, the CDU is gonna win, and or let's say fascist and authoritarian politics is gonna win. It doesn't matter if the AfD is gonna implement them or the CDU or the FDP. So voting for the lesser evil right now is kind of like, it's a bit of a similar situation than we had in the United States, where people were like, oh yeah, but you don't want Trump to win, so please vote for Democrats. Please sacrifice the values that you had before and vote for this party because that's what's important. But I think if we want to see real change, if we want to see something happen, and if we also want to hold other parties accountable for their actions so they change, I think we need to be strong in our stance. I think we need to show that we mean what we say. And I think it's really important to make that clear and to show that if you sacrifice our rights, and I mean now our rights in terms of migrant rights, people who have no voice, the rights of people in other countries, Palestinians, Congolese, all the people who are oppressed, if you sacrifice their rights, even if it's just for temporary comfort in your own country, that you don't feel like the fascists are knocking on your door, that is not solidarity. And I think that's something that really Morel wants to stand for. We stand for international solidarity, and for those voting for the status quo right now, while saying that you have international solidarity, from our perspective, doesn't make sense. So yeah, that would be the second one. And the final point, before I pass the mic on to my comrade, is Morel should join the Linke. We should become part of them. We should transform the Linke from within. I think that is not a good argument also from a leftist perspective, because we shouldn't centralize our powers. We should be able to keep each other in check. We should be able to have different and diverse left voices that are forming a left movement that can, as I said, listen to each other, criticize each other. So we would, like, at least from my perspective now, I can't maybe speak for everyone in Morel right now, but I also don't think that the Linke should join necessarily Morel 25. I think the Linke should develop in itself and develop and be better, and then we have Morel 25, and then we have communist parties and everything, and we should maybe start building alliances together. Form fractions together. I think that is very important. So yeah, I think that is something that, we need different leftist powers to keep each other in check. And yeah, so I really hope that I can convince you tonight to vote for Morel 25, or to invest your vote in Morel 25. Because yes, we will not be in the Bundestag, we will not pass the 5%, that is absolutely delusional, and it would be delusional of me to tell you that, but we're definitely a growing party, we're definitely a strong party, and if we get 0.5%, we can do so much more over the next few years. We can support building a very socialist, very leftist base in Berlin, and I think Morel 25 and DM 25 should be a part of it. And yeah, thank you very much, and I'm very looking forward to all your questions.
I'll just do a quick mentioning of Ramsis Kilani. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll pass it on to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me, even though I'm not representing any party that's standing in the elections right now. I think to start off with the general political situation, one expression of the deepening economic crisis, but also the sharpening inter-imperialist rivalry, is of course Trump's new government with the tech oligarchy and its nationalist protectionism, but we can also see similar developments within Germany reacting to more and more of the centrality of the question of imperialism. And it started with the so-called Zeitenwende, the historic turning point that Olaf Scholz was talking about, reacting to the Ukraine war. Spending billions of euros in the German military and the militarization of German society. And it's not only a militarization in the outside, internationally, for competition against other global powers, but it's also a militarization within. And we have seen that in the Palestine movement, for example. If you look at the police, if you look at forming new laws, resolutions, Germany becoming more and more of a police state in certain degrees. I think this is what I mean with militarization within. And the former Ampel government, I think Daniel already touched on this, but it collapsed due to the question of how to get that money back. Basically, the billions that were put into the military. And Lindner from the neoliberal FDP said basically, and he really did that, connecting it to the old Nazi slogan actually, cannons instead of butter. That was his proposal. what did SPD and the Green Party say? They didn't say no cannons, they said cannons and a little tiny bit of margarine. That was basically the reaction. But these still were differences within the government in a certain scale that made it collapse. So we have the new elections therefore. And as per usual, in times like these, where you have a huge crisis, not only a governmental crisis, but also a crisis of US imperialism in decline, that is also affecting the West in general, a crisis of social living standards, and an economic crisis behind it of the capitalist system. As per usual, racism serves as a distraction from this crisis. And we can see it right now during the election campaign. And it's not only the fascists of the AfD, and I want to clearly say they are fascists, they are Nazis in the tradition of the NSDAP, and we have to treat them as such. They are very dangerous. But it's not only them. We can see it with Merz and his 5 points plan, but we can also see it with the so-called 10 points plan by the Green Party and Habeck. How they are coming more and more to the right and basically capitulating to the pressure from the right. There are still differences also between that, but they are attacking those who are affected by the elections, but are not able mostly to vote. Either way, the ones without German citizenship. And so the elections are important for non-German citizens as well here, of course. And the racist debate is, of course, grist to the mill of the AfD. Whenever they think they are taking votes of the AfD by coming closer and closer to their demands, they are actually normalizing them and making their arguments less of a taboo. And this is what happens. And at the end, the people vote for the original anyway, if they can. Why should they vote for the other one? And the AfD, of course, is saying, we are delivering. We will do what they promise. And we build up the power needed for it, because you cannot do it with a bourgeois state alone. And an example of the failure of the parliamentary Brandmauer we have seen against the AfD by Merz and others collaborating with them, also BSW, for example, Sarah Wagenknecht's new party, is that even the Green Party and the SPD, who were arguing against it, were arguing on a formal level. You shouldn't, it's morally wrong to collaborate with the AfD. But they didn't say anything about the content of mass deportations. I think that's a big issue there. If we fight the AfD, we have to be very clear, our resistance against the Nazis has to be anti-racist to the core. And wherever we are in united fronts, and we will be in united fronts with the Green and the SPD and the Linke and others, and it needs to be a broad front, everyone who is against the fascists that want to build paramilitias on the streets that can finish the job, that's their aim, we have to work together with them, but we also have to have the right to criticize them within these movements, within these mass mobilizations. We have to be able to attack their racism as well, to attack their social policies as well. I think that's the situation we're in right now, with all the main parties that are very visible to the public. And I don't want a minute of silence for them, but I want to say this much. It's a very shitty time for liberals, to say the least. And so now a lot of liberals who voted Greens or SPD before are also considering voting for the left for the first time, sometimes in their life. I don't know if you've heard it also in your circle of friends or more apolitical people. And it's mostly Die Linke, of course, because it doesn't support this anti-refugee incitement. And 10 of thousands of new members have joined Die Linke. Actually, it is said to have the highest state of members it ever had. And this is a step forward we should welcome. I also want to say this. it's nothing we should oppose. It is a development because the other parties are shifting more and more to the right. But it's not a shift to the left in and of itself, I would say. It's a very polarized situation because at the same time, the elections and the strategy Die Linke poses has very clear limitations. No election campaign and no parliamentary strategy is going to stop the AfD Nazis. It will not change their way up if Die Linke gets into parliament after the elections. We have to be clear. They build their strength on the streets, and we have to stop them on the streets. We have to stop them in our neighborhoods, in our workplaces, wherever we are active. And we have to stay active on this. And this is the main thing. An election campaign as and of itself is not the strategy to stop the AfD. And racism divides our movement against the AfD. So we have to fight it. And you don't need to have voting rights to get involved in these kinds of practices. That's also important. Refugees should be part of our movement. Migrants should be part of our movements. And they can be part of our movements when we organize, when we are setting things up to confront the Nazis and block them. Whether they are more in the background when things get too risky, but we have to stay connected because we are part of each other and depend on each other to fight the AfD from below. So there are not only limitations to reformist strategy that is focused on parliament and a place in the government when it comes to fighting fascism. That's one of the issues. But history and also recent experience has shown us again and again that you simply cannot take over the capitalist state and the government. We see it also, for example, with Die Linke in federal governments here in Berlin. Greetings to Klaus Lederer, who is not member of Die Linke anymore, but he was in functions like this and also others, but also in Bremen, in Thüringen, where Die Linke took part in social cuts, in deportations and all the cruelties of this system. And whenever a reformist party comes closer and closer to the possibility of governing, it will make concessions to this very system it will need to manage. And the first system, of course, it will accept, and the first positions it will have to accept in Germany is Staatsräson. The first sacrifice it will need to make is Palestine. And we see that with the development of such parties. We saw it with the Green Party, we see it with Die Linke as well. The closer they get, this will happen because German capitalist interests depend on the interests of German imperialism. And the watchdog in the Middle East, the Zionist state of Israel, is very important geopolitically as well as economically in the region with the most gas and oil resources. And this is, they can tell you a lot about moral and guilt and so on. That's not what it's about. It's about cold calculated economic and geopolitical interests. That's what the Staatsräson is about. It's not about Jewish life. It's not about their shame of history. It's about the ruling class wanting to gain more and more resources and geopolitical influence. So you have to support German imperialism as the interests of the German ruling class at a certain level. And even if some party would manage to gain enough votes, nevertheless, German law leaves the option open for the state bureaucracy to take over when there's a government it doesn't want to have. It also leaves the option, of course, always of a military coup. And so this path has severe limitations. And we have seen it, a very important historic example is Allende in Chile, who had basically the reformist way through parliament and through the government, and in the end, the parliamentary buildings got bombed by the army and Pinochet took over. That's the counter-revolutionary action they are going to take from the state bureaucracy. And we see the concessions by Die Linke clear as day when it comes to the question of imperialism, I think. Yeah, and my expulsion because of my Palestine activism amidst the genocide in Gaza was only the tip of the iceberg. And of course I was forced out especially because of the position on the right to resist and the question of my opposition to the right to exist for colonial apartheid system in Palestine. So the other things we have seen, which showed that the space for revolutionaries working within the party got slimmer, was that Die Linke in parliament voted not only for a resolution right after the 7th of October, giving full unconditional support to Israel militarily, but also for deporting refugees and further state repression. But also more recently, when it comes to only the question of the fundamental democratic rights of the freedom of speech, with this so-called anti-Semitism resolutions, with 2 resolutions, there was an abstention from the vote. So we should be clear that even with a parliamentary voice, we cannot count on reformist parties when it comes to the question of imperialism and the question of Palestine especially. So, but we live in times where the question of imperialism is very central, and where, whenever it comes up, we need to have a revolutionary force that is anchored within the movements, that is anchored within our community spaces, that can act right away. It needed right away action after the 7th of October. And we couldn't afford unclarity on these questions. We couldn't afford plurality on these questions, but we had to act right away. And so it was important that we could break the demo bans very early, also with the support of the Palestinians and the masses in Sonnenallee and beyond, by putting pressure right away, by demotivating the police right away, by sending a clear message: we will not accept this. And to have this, you cannot afford a reformist party bureaucracy that holds you back. I think this is very important, and this is why we need an independent revolutionary organization that is able to act in instances like these. Also, for example, pushing NGOs for this petition and the demonstrations they were doing now, it was forced from below. Even the upheaval of Die Linke is witnessing right now was forced from resistance from below against the AfD, and the mass mobilizations, mass blockades, and so on. And I think a problem is if parties are not involved and anchored within movements anymore, but are too deep in the parliamentary road, they are not, the movements are going past them. And it's not only Palestine, for example, also the climate movement, which was a way easier target actually, and way more accepted in German society, that it didn't play a great role in. Still, I think even though both Die Linke as well as Mera 25 have a reformist perspective that will not dissolve itself, what is clear to us as a revolutionary minority is not clear for a lot of people within the working class that we want to reach. And there are a lot of hopes for improvement within the system that are very understandable first. And that can also be a first step for people to politicize, to radicalize, to understand the system and confront those who are against them. And I think this is important to keep in mind, that we shouldn't stand on the sidelines, but that we should connect with these hopes they are fighting for. But voting for Die Linke as a mass party that has an anchoring now should go without any illusions, because of the things I just mentioned. It's not about the process of voting for itself, but about becoming active, getting involved. What really counts is that we get organized and build up counterpower on the streets, in the workplaces, in the neighborhoods, with our surroundings. That's the real thing we have to do, I think. And the social attacks that are to be expected, especially under Merz from the CDU, will provoke resistance as well on a mass base. And the CDU can do it, but it doesn't have the same grip the SPD has on the trade unions, for example. So there are times ahead we will have to be ready for, and that we need to get ready and active right away. And I think if Die Linke, if Mera 25, and if other forces want to get involved, they are welcome to it, and we have to work together. For example, it's late, it's a late step, but Jan van Aken from Die Linke formulated hands-off Gaza Trump, after not saying more than a few words on a genocide taking place for months. But at this point, we have to invite them. Let's do it on a national level. Let's organize protests together. Bring your base. Let's get in contact. And this is the approach of united front. A united front against genocide, a united front against German imperialism, a united front against social cuts and the attacks we are expecting, and a united front against them wanting to deport refugees. We have to be clear on that question all the time, and this is what I want to end with. Get active, get involved, get organized. That is the main thing after all. After the election, before the election, during the election.
All right, thank you very much. I think those were all three really great speeches, and really great to hear your positions on these things. So right now there is the sign up for the Left Berlin newsletter going around. It goes out every Thursday at 12. I should know that, I help write it. And it has information on events taking place in Berlin, demos, campaigns, but also news in Germany and news from Berlin. Okay, so now we will go towards the discussion portion, specifically questions from the audience. My lovely colleague Yasmin over here will have the mic. Unfortunately, because the microphones are attached by by wire, we can't move it into the audience. So if you have a question, you will have to move up to the front. We do have a camera there which is filming the panel, and you might be seen. So if you do not feel comfortable being filmed, that's totally fair. Just let the camera crew know, and they will point a camera to the side. If you also do not feel comfortable with your voice being heard, also totally fair, tell Yasmin, and she will actually ask the question in that scenario. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, they can come to the front. Of course, please be respectful, because that is very important. And if you can make space for people if they do want to come to the front. I see in the back. Yeah, can you just come to the front? Thank you. Is it on? Sorry, just checking.
Yeah, hello. Okay, I'm Jad from Gaza. Jad from Leipzig. I come on behalf of some friends from Leipzig who couldn't be here today. I can't vote, but they can vote, so we're all discussing among each other the question of voting. And I want to be frank here. I don't want to be polishing any of what I say, because in the times we live in, it's important to be frank. So I'm with a representative from Die Linke. Sorry, I didn't get your name.
Daniel.
Sorry?
Daniel.
Daniel, okay. I just don't really understand.
Turn mine off, maybe that helps.
Okay, now. Yeah, I just really don't. When you said, when you were criticizing Die Linke, you said they did not position themselves on the genocide. But this isn't true. They do much more than that. They are sabotaging us so much in Saxony, and this should be very clear to everyone here also. One example is one parliamentarian from Saxony is trying to ban Handallah, Leipzig, They contacted the Interior Ministry to do that. If Hamdallah is banned in Leipzig, this is the whole the activism for Palestine is completely sabotaged. This is very important. This is not just an issue of where you position yourself, whether you position yourself on genocide or not. So today, if you, for example, excluded BSV from this discussion today because they are anti-immigration or anti-queer, let's say, then why is Linke here when there are Zionists in the group? There is one guy who was running for also for Linke in Leipzig who was wearing the IDF shirt. I don't think this is acceptable to be working with those people. If you work with those people, you are diluting the issue of Gaza so much, it becomes a trivial issue that we can disagree on, and all the other issues, okay, they are revolutionary. I don't think they are revolutionary. They are imperialist. They are as bad as the AfD, honestly. I don't think they are revolutionary at all. This when it comes to Die Linke. So yeah, I don't see this at all, and I think people from Die Linke who are pro-Palestine, they should have split long ago and from their own group because they have the leverage now. There's so much support for a new group. You can't keep on giving those people what they want and entertaining their ideas. I don't think so. So this was one point. Another point. I just think with the grassroots movement being mentioned a lot here, I don't really see a lot of people from Zone LA here, for example. This is not really this unfortunately, whether we acknowledge it or not, represents a certain class of society. And similar in Leipzig, when we talk about those groups going and we want to build something grassroots, they're not at all engaging with the community, the Arab community, for example. Those people are isolated, and they are the biggest victim of what's going on. So yeah, those are my 2 points, and there are more of comments than questions, but yeah.
So what I would suggest is that we take 3 questions. It doesn't have to be questions. You can also add your contributions, and then we will let our speakers answer or reply. I think you were the second one.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. Is it okay if I just sit and not stand up? Okay. Okay, so I mean, I kind of am building up on what the speaker before me said about Die Linke. I don't think it's quite like the AfD, to be honest, but I think Die Linke has shown that it's like a social, I would say, social chauvinist party. That means that they have like, you know, all of their demands about like social reforms, like they want to do something about the school system, they want to do something about the healthcare system, etc. But they don't really take on the fight against their own bourgeoisie, which would be on the question of Palestine now, like more than any other question actually in German politics. So my question is a little bit like, maybe also to Ramsi, whether or not, because I mean your group Sozialismus von unten was quite recently, I mean you were expelled from Die Linke and other members then followed you because you said, okay, it's not possible to work within this party anymore. You were, you know, part of them for a long time in Marx 21, and then later on you were like Sozialismus von unten. But what I now wonder is a little bit like you went out of the party, but still now you're saying, okay, in these elections, because the left is polarizing around the question of migration, and it's the only party that is polarizing around the question of migration, we should vote for Die Linke. But my question is, I mean, you as a Trotskyist organization, right? Like, how will this actually solve for me, and I would hope also for you as a Marxist, the most pressing issue of building a communist leadership? And I'm not sure if the election of Die Linke, which is a reformist party, and I mean, I'm not saying you cannot work within reformist parties, right? But actually you are saying that because you left the party and you said to me, and I mean your statements were like, we cannot work in this party anymore. So I mean, if you say, okay, it is possible to go inside Die Linke and work in this reformist party and try to build like an anti-imperialist pole, try to polarize within this party, then okay, yes, I can understand. But if you don't think that you can, win anything in this party, it's not possible anymore, then why are you saying that they should vote for Die Linke? And equally, and so because you're from Mera 21, I don't know so much about your party, but I would like to know a little bit more about the program of your party and how you're tackling this problem of the communist leadership. Because I think the most pressing issue right now is that we don't have that in the working class. The working class is split along many, factions. Most of them now, or many of them, are voting for racist parties. Some of them are in Die Linke, some of them in the SPD, etc. But we need a unity of this working class. So I actually don't agree with this point of, we need a diversity and we need some checks and balances. Okay, yeah, we need some checks and balances. We need, in my opinion, we need democratic centralism, right? This is also a debate, but then in the end we need to have a unity of the working class. And this is what Ramsi has said with the United Front approach, etc., trying to use that. But yeah, so my question is really how do we build a communist leadership in these times?
Thank you. Let's take a third question. Anybody else? Yeah, you can come to the front, or I can come to the front.
Hi. By way of identification, I'm an American, German-American journalist with dual citizenship. I really came here to find out who to vote for. I'm also, for full disclosure, I'm a member of Mera, and admire the broad base that it's built since 2016, which is fairly recently. And my question is does Mera, or anyone else for that matter, have any kind of vision for a successful coalition, not just the left as a vanguard party, but a coalition in the way that the system is supposed to encourage, involving conversations with the Greens, even with the SPD, but certainly the left. I mean, that seems to be already happening, which is good to see. So that voters can, ganz normale Menschen, the voters, can imagine a winning coalition, not just a winning vanguard party.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think
That was, I think, for each speaker, an interesting question each. How do we build communist leadership? What is Mera's vision for effective collaboration with other left parties? And how does Die Linke justify its didn't only not take a position, but also sabotaged in certain states the Palestine movement? I will start first with you, Daniel.
Thank you very much for the question to the comrade from Leipzig. As I said before, I can't deny everything you said about Die Linke, and it's a very important addition to what you said about the position parts of Die Linke took towards the genocide. You mentioned a few cases. There sadly are a few more. As I said before, I think you have to choose which battles you take, and with no illusions, as Ramsi said. I, for myself and other comrades with me, took the decision, although Die Linke has those weaknesses, although Die Linke has those limitations, that we do not want to stand beside Die Linke at this moment in time, with a record membership, with new party members coming to the party, having, in my experience, a very different stance on the issue of Palestine, the issue of anti-imperialism, that's many thousand people, and I don't want to let the chance go to convince them for something more than parliamentarism and electoralism. That's all I can say. As you said, as Ramsi said, is I think the most people in this room no, there are those limitations. I chose this fight for now. Let's see how it goes. I think within Die Linke there are many positions still contested, and there's a certain fluidity which I don't see in any major big party at the moment. And yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, thanks a lot for the questions. I will start with your question. If I remember correctly, you asked what Mera 25, not 21, 25 by the way, but what Mera 25 basically does to build communist leadership, and you disagreed with me on the checks and balances kind of idea basically. To maybe elaborate a little bit on the membership that DM or Mera 25 attracts, we indeed do not focus solely on communist leadership. We describe ourselves as basically a group, or like depends on if we talk about DM or Mera, so either a movement or a party, of different progressive left forces. These can be communists, these can be anarchists, these can be socialists, Marxist, Leninist, Trotskyist, I think you pronounce it, sorry. So we have a broad different spectrum of leftist perspectives. And that is also a little bit our intention, because we want to build this unity. We want to be able to be broader and be able to bring more people basically together. And then also to come to your criticism about checks and balances, I think it is very important to have this, at least for now, because I don't see, at least now I'm speaking mainly for myself, but I'm going to elaborate this a little bit more for the party. At least for myself, I don't see only communist leadership or only anarchist leadership or other forms of leadership as the main or as the one solution. And I think checks and balances sound sometimes very liberal. I think it's maybe more like that we are able to criticize ourselves properly. If we unify everything into one organization, if we not only centralize power but also centralize structures, then we're becoming less and less able to criticize ourselves or to be able to be criticized, I think. And I think in that sense, I would really like to have very strong communist parties right now that are keeping also Mera, for instance, from this perspective in check, because yes, we have communists, for instance, in our party, but then they're dealing with, you know, a broad spectrum of other leftists, and then we come to this idea of that things, you know, like maybe get watered down, or maybe get, you know, even subconsciously, even if we don't want that. So I do, and that's why where I basically have to disagree with you, I do believe that right now the best thing that we can do for a left is have different strong organizations that are working on each other, that keep each other, yes, it's with checks and balances, but that criticize each other and that are able to push against each other. That's why I also said before, like I don't think this is, for instance, like although I just harshly criticized Linke, I don't think it's the end of them. They should figure out what they need to figure out. I do think that Mera is an important force against that, but that's not the only reason why we exist. We have a very different approach to politics. We have a very different idea of how politics should look like. But these balances right now are important. I think that's one main reason of why people, are very critical with the Linke, but also because we exist, right? Because we're a clear consequence, even if it's not about membership, but still we are a political consequence. The fact that we're both sitting here and basically have to argue against each other is the reason for that. So yeah, that's to give that. So I have to disappoint. We're not like strictly working on communist leadership at the moment. That doesn't mean that we don't see it as important, and that might change in the future. That depends a lot on our membership and how it develops. And then about the vision for successful coalitions. I would say right now coalition with centralist parties are not on our agenda, mainly because of what has also been repeated before. We have very principled stances against imperialism, against colonialism, something that we do not see right now in other parties. That being said, coalition building, and that comes maybe also a little bit closer to the idea of the question that was before with the critical safeguards, that is really important. And I think that right now what we're seeing is a huge shift in the left here. there were a lot of reaction to the fascist and authoritarian tendencies that we're seeing right now. A lot of people are becoming more active, and I can definitely see that in the next few months, especially political forces right now, whether it's in Berlin or in Germany, are starting to organize amongst each other, coming together amongst each other, and are trying to form coalitions. We know that we have been, at least for Berlin, other parties have come to us, already asked for this. We're also very interested in it. It's more of given the circumstances of like snap elections that are kind of dragging our attentions already away from that, which is also actually something that is a disadvantage, right? Like the fact that big parties can kind of just like play an election whenever they want, and small parties have to run behind it and like collect the signature and does this and does that, also keeps us from organizing ourselves. I'm not saying that they intentionally did that to prevent us from organizing, but you can see how the system is constantly working against us. So I feel like once especially this election period is over, and looking forward to, especially in Berlin, to the elections next year, and at the end of next year, the local elections, I think we can see a lot of negotiations and talks between leftist parties here and leftist groups. And I, for myself, really, really hope that we start with a strong coalition, and that we can actually make a lot of grounds, because the Berlin Senate really needs it. So yeah, I hope I could answer that question.
So the reason I'm in Socialism from Below, or Sozialismus von unten, is because I think and I believe we need a revolutionary organization that can also, together with other revolutionary tendencies, for example, in Mera 25 and other revolutionary groups within the Linke at the moment, grow together in a revolutionary mass party at a certain point, and also with the most progressive elements within the working class. And I think it's central to build these organizations now. Revolutions are inevitable, also on a global stage. Actually, we live in an era of revolutions, if you look around. Yeah? If you look to Bangladesh, Nigeria, if you look to the Arab Spring, which is a bit further away, South America, and so on, we have witnessed and seen a lot of uprisings with revolutionary potential. But the question always is, you cannot build a revolutionary party only then, start building it, while a revolutionary uprising is spreading. You have to be ready when situations like these unfold, and that's why I put my efforts into this, and I think why we should put our efforts into it when we have the consciousness that this will be needed to really change the world. And I think we don't need vanguardism, so an elitist way where we are at this point when the class consciousness is here, yeah, high above, no one even is able to follow it. But we need a vanguard party in a sense that is here while we still have a connection to the base and to the consciousness of the people. Because ideas are contradictory and the consciousness is contradictory within the class, and we have to wage a struggle for the minds of the people. And I think we can only do that with democratic centralism. Because for me, democratic centralism doesn't mean the Stalinist abomination, basically, that was a bureaucratic centralism, where you cannot discuss, where you cannot criticize, and so on. For me, democratic centralism means we discuss, we criticize each other the hardest ways sometimes, and then we have a decision, because there are moments where we need to take decisions, and then we act on this decision. And if it was wrong, and if I had the right position before, I will act on it that time, but I will criticize thereafter. And we have to discuss on this, what happened, and also be able to vote against the former leadership, for example, if it was a severe mistake. This is democratic centralism for me. And democratic decisions can only be made in this way. And I think we cannot, like I said before, we cannot afford plurality and unclarity, which it actually means, to be honest, in times when it's the question, do the Palestinians have a right to resist? Do we have the right to confront the police? How do we do it? Do we need mass support? These are important questions that can decide whether we win or we don't. And I think we need clarity at these points. I think we built a revolutionary socialist leadership within these practices and within this approach, while struggling also for ideas by the united front approach. And the united front doesn't mean we are all leftists, we all love each other and so on, with the SPD and the Green Party, but it's a tactic and a strategy of struggle for me. The point is to organize practical solidarity together and to put them to the test also. Yeah, and to show their base that our tactics make sense. For example, when it comes to confronting the AfD, where the SPD leadership might say, no, don't step out of the police chains and so on. Where we as revolutionaries think, yes, we need to confront the Nazis directly, and the police are there to defend them. They are there to defend capitalist interests. Because of our analysis and our understanding, we will make further steps. Same with Palestine. When it comes to anti-imperialist resistance, we say the Palestinians have a right to resist by any means necessary, and we will defend their rights. And whenever a reformist party says, yeah, it needs to be both sides and so on, just like Israel has a right to defend itself, has a right to exist and so on, we have to be clear on these questions, because otherwise it will not work. And there we can put them to the test and show the base that we are the ones who drive it further. And I think, yes, it's not possible for revolutionaries at the moment to work within Die Linke, but the position on voting on a party doesn't depend on whether you can work with it in it, or whether it makes sense at the moment to work within it as a revolutionary. And my position is clear that voting won't solve anything either way by itself. But still, elections are class questions, for the simple fact that class questions are being raised, are being formulated, and demands are being raised. And I think a very important question we should ask ourselves at this point is, for the election, which bar do I want to see increase when the election results are there? When it comes to the AfD winning huge votes, and what bars do the most progressive elements of the working class want to see being raised, being increased on the day of the election? And I believe it's Die Linke, because you also won't see the other bars of the smaller parties. And we have to also build a connection to these hopes within the class. We can't be here saying voting doesn't have anything, don't do it, either way. We need to struggle, we need to fight the capitalist state. Revolution is the outlook, but we need to be here. We say, yes, when it comes to the question of social wages, we are against the attacks of the CDU. When it comes to deportations, we are against these approaches. And we will vote for those who stand against it at this point. Without any illusions, and with always saying, we need to get organized, we need to be active, we need to get involved on a practical level where we can step forward. Thank you.
Taking more questions. Want to come to the front, Phil? You can already raise your hand if a question pops into your mind while somebody else is speaking. Okay, you can come next.
Maybe go.
Hi, I'm Phil from the Left Berlin, we're organising this event. The Left Berlin until last year took money from the Linke. We took money from the Linke on two grounds. One, that did not affect any of our position, particularly on Palestine. We never let the Linke dictate to us what we said on Palestine. and secondly, that the money we spent will be used to build social movements. Something different happened after the 7th of October, which meant that taking money from the Linke, associated with Linke, made it more difficult to build the Palestine movements. People would come up to us and said, we're for Palestine, look at what Linke is doing. And so we decided to set up as an independent organisation. I think that was correct. At the same time, the Left Berlin won't be standing for election on the 23rd of February for two reasons. One, we actually wouldn't do very well, and secondly, we don't think that's the main place in which we change society. We need to build the movements which can increase the size of our side. So, on the one hand, I would urge everybody, and we do urge everybody who's allowed to vote, which is not everybody here, everyone who's allowed to vote left, because we don't want to wake up on the 24th of February and see suddenly fascist in government or something, which is a very real, very real threat. The way in which Merz is tacking towards the AfD. At the same time, 23rd of February is important. Go and vote. But 24th of February is also important. What you do afterwards. 22nd of February is even more important. 22nd of February, there's a demonstration against cuts in Berlin, which it's called by trade unions, which needs to be as big as possible, as loud as possible. 15th of February is important because there's a demonstration against Germany sending weapons to Israel. We're at a situation where Trump is trying to impose a second Nakba on Palestine. He's doing that with the full cooperation of the German government. He will have the full cooperation of the next German government. And unless we seriously build a movement in Germany, which is as big as those in other countries, then that's going to pass on our watch. So I think all the discussions about who we should vote for are important, but just as important is, okay, how do we build a serious Palestine movement? How do we stop Nazis? How do we stop the cuts which are happening in Berlin? Which is why we've invited, for example, the Gaza Committee to be here, who are building for the demonstration on the 15th. Which is why I've got posts on the back for both demonstrations, 15th and 22nd leaflets. Please go home and don't just. Okay, I'll go and vote maybe on the 23rd or not, and that's all I'm going to do. Get involved. Take the leaflets, take the posters. Tell your friends, bring your friends to demonstrations. Agitate amongst yourselves. We stand as resources, the Left Berlin, our website, our newsletter, and everything which you can use to know about what's going on. But really, the movement is us, and we all need to get together. And what we hope from this meeting is not just we convince one or two people to vote for one or other left party. What we hope from this meeting is we get as many people as possible a little bit more active than they were before they came in here.
I would like to add, also don't forget about Sudan, don't forget about Congo. There is a demonstration for Congo also on Saturday, and they deserve our attention, so keep them on the radar, please.
Thank you. Where's the best position? Forward?
No.
All right. I'm from the group Workers' Power, Arbeitermacht in German. As we consider ourselves or understand ourselves as Trotskyists as well, I agree with the vast majority you said, Ramsis. I think when the left party will get over 5%, there will be a huge euphoria within the party that they achieved this, and many young people and new members in the party will ask themselves how to get on. What's next? Part of them will be active within the party, and I think in the text coming from a Merz government that will be there, I think. The left and the left party and their members, and especially those who are members of the left and are within the trade unions, in the bureaucracy and so on, there will be some kind of vanguard in the fight against this, but there will also be an obstacle in the fight against this. The trade unions blocked an efficient fight against the Agenda 2010 back then in the 0 years, and it's cruel to have a fight to push them to have a political strike against the attacks that will come. It's the only answer that would be right. In Germany, it's rare to have a political strike. You can't find it back in the, since this republic exists. There weren't any political mass strikes in this country. And this is the debate we have to bring in the left party and to bring within the trade unions as revolutionaries, because otherwise we are some kind limited to fights on the street, on the streets, which is important, like the Palestinian protests we have seen. But what a success it would be to block weapons that shall delivered to Palestine, and we can't do it without workers. It's impossible. And so I'd like to see the debate going more into this direction, how to win actually the working class and the vanguard of the working class. And a part of it will be in the left party and is organized within this party. And we need, if we want to build a revolutionary party, we also need to have a discuss about the program. Not only how do we fight, but what are we fighting for? How do we organize themselves? I agree with some parts you said. But I think we can't kick out the question of the state. We can't just build up a revolutionary party and let's take over the state. The capitalist states have to be overthrown at some day in the future. They are the biggest obstacle in our fights. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm not really sure if this is a question, but I just want to say something. I mean, I'm the only academic in my family. Like, my family members never saw high school in their lives, so it's like, you know, me going to university was like a big thing. And my brother and my mom and all the other ones are like working class people. And when I was like arguing or like discussing with my brother who to vote for years ago, I always tried to convince him to vote for the Linke or like Green Links. And he was like, you know what? I don't understand what the Linke wants. They're too over-academic. They're like, when I read what they say, I don't understand them. I don't understand what they would do for me as a working class person who has like a free shift working system. And he was like, no, I can't. Like, I can't vote for someone I don't understand what they stand for because it's too over-academic. They're like talking in a really high German class, whatever. But I could convince him to become a Mera member because he was like, hey, this is a party. I don't know if I would ever really active in politics. That's not my thing. He's still doing it. I'm still trying to get him there. But he became a member because he was like, you know, Mera is like, I can understand what they really fight for and what they want, and I feel represented as a working class migrant in Germany. And yeah, I mean, maybe a question is how the Linke could be less academic and more like working class friendly because they came from a working class movement. And also, I checked, like, for joke, like the membership fees of the different parties, and the Linke had the highest. And I mean, I understand because they don't take money from big companies and everything, so it's all fine. But I mean, Mera also don't do it, and you can choose to just pay €1 per month to become a member. So I asked myself, like, how is the Linke getting into like working class people? Because one, they can't understand you, and two, they can't afford you. So yeah, I don't know.
Is there another question that is related to this topic? Because both questions were somewhat related, right? About inclusivity and reaching workers. Otherwise, I think I would give them to some of you who want to respond.
Yeah, I mean, this one was.
This one was directed towards me, I guess. So yeah, very important issue, and yeah, kind of the core of left politics. And Die Linke has, in many ways, failed to reach out to the working class. I can't say that the minimum entry fee is 150, so this just as a side note. But of course, you're right. We lost ourselves in academic rhetoric, but I don't think that's the main point. I think the main point is that Die Linke developed from a party of protest in the years of the beginning, a party on the side of the workers, to a party mainly in the majority focused on parliamentary politics. And so, yeah, as it was said before, as it was stated before, for many people this is the reality of politics, the parliament, but still when it comes to the fight, when it comes to the struggle, when it comes to the strikes, people ask questions, people ask about perspectives, and if we cannot give them more than vote for us, that's a problem. On a practical level, I'd still say that there is a development within Die Linke. I would say canvassing is a part of it. Again, like all the things I said about Die Linke without illusions, but in my experience, it is a great way to get in touch with people again, as absurd as it might sound. But we definitely made steps towards listening to the working class again. But we do not just want to listen, of course we want to organize. And I think what Phil said is very, very important. I liked it very much. We must not only discuss what happens on the 23rd, but we have to think about how and what we can organize on the 24th. That would be my goal as well. This does not go for all of Die Linke. That's, I think I made this point clear. But I think there are hundreds and thousands of members within Die Linke which can be won for this perspective.
I just want to briefly add to the point of workers' participation. I think it's very what we need to do is give people a voice and not be the voice for them, but empower them so they can be it themselves, right? And Mera is at the start of doing this. Mera has still a long way to go. But that's really important to me. I feel like, so for instance for me, because that's that politics is becoming by nature classist and super academic, that's happening throughout the spectrum, right? This is also something that's happening to Mera, by the way. I'm not one parent of mine went to academia, but I went to academia, so I don't also by nature represent the working class right now. And I should not pretend that I can. I did not make the same experiences, so my job is to empower them, to give them the same voice and platform that I could right now claim, right? That starts with, as you said, with very low membership fees. That starts with also, in my opinion, is mobilizing, for instance, for citizenship rights. It already came up with my comrades that are sitting here, but that is really an important part because having citizenship is what bars most people from political participation. That's that one key thing, and it's so hard to get citizenship. There's so many barriers here for people, and advocating and really focusing on that as a party to reduce these barriers, to give people the chance to become more politically active outside of themselves and be their own agent to advocate what they need and what they want, is the most important thing. I don't think Mera should, or at least the academic wing of Mera, for instance, which we also very clearly have. I don't want to deny that. But we shouldn't pretend like we can represent workers. We need to be able to empower workers. We need to be able so they can easily join our party. We need to be able to support groups that exactly do that and give them the stage and use our privilege for that. So I just wanted to quickly add to that.
Yeah, so on the question of the new membership also of Die Linke and the hopes and also illusions maybe after the election results, I think on a national level, with very few exceptions, for example like Die Linke Neukölln, I think Die Linke will not be able to hold these new members because it has such bureaucratic structures that do not really have an orientation also on day-to-day activism and what needs to be done after the elections beyond election campaigning. There are some, but not all of them. And it will also certainly not be able to train them in theory and practice under these circumstances. So I think the question for us is how to get them involved, how to build trust, how to get in touch and so on. And I think the question, for example, of the state will need to play a role not only in theory, but also in practice while confronting the forces of the state, like the police in different kind of actions. And you learn the most by practical experience and also combining that. Of course, we should have a very, it's very important to have theory because we can't afford to repeat the mistakes of the past for the hundreds and thousands of time. We don't have a lot of time left, to be honest, when we look around in the world. And we need to build trust through mutual action, like, for example, building open committees for Gaza and also on other topics. And when I say open, the question, of course, of to academic language and so on will play a role, and we need to reduce that and confront that. It needs to be on the base of very clear demands that also stem from the lives of the people, their day-to-day life and their experiences. And I think this is a very concrete way also to get in touch with the class. And the revolutionary program needs to develop and grow from the actual struggle and the actual demands that are being posed within it. It cannot be abstract. We cannot build it on the sideline and before as a solely like act of propaganda. And for example, when it comes to the working class, sometimes I also feel like there's a huge mystification around it in certain milieus. Because I grew up in a like migrant working class neighborhood in North Rhine-Westphalia, raised by a single parent and so on, in poverty and so on, and was working already in school times at the age of 14, starting with newspaper delivery and so on, going on with working in factories and working on refrigerators and so on. And of course, in the development, it was not like a zoo for me. Oh, these are the working class. But I was in direct touch. We were talking, and let me tell you, some are assholes, and some aren't. Some are really cool people, but they are human beings that have a certain life they are attending to. And even though you can go through academia, you can go through university, most of the university students will become working class afterwards. Because in the sense of Marx, being working class means that you do not own and control the means of production, but you have a contract you work for. So I think we shouldn't always like differentiate and have a division between working on a computer or working with your hands, for example. Sorry. I think this is very important. The class is very diverse, and it's also not only the white male man in the factory, the industrial worker, but it's queer, it's migrant, it's BOC, it's female, it's trans, it's whatever it is. The working class is very diverse, and we need to address these issues. We need to fight exploitation, and we need to also fight oppression and discrimination within the class, because it divides us and it divides the struggle. And we have to be clear on that and make no false concessions.
Time for our last round. Last round of questions. So this is your last chance. Anyone? You and you and you. Oh. You can take only 3 questions.
That's okay, I'll sit also. I think I'm also just going to make a comment. For transparency, I'm also part of MERA, and I am a migrant, and that's also a bit of a reason why I joined MERA, because I feel like in German politics, us migrants, our votes are always taken hostage. We are, however, like, they talk a lot about us, but we are always an afterthought. And this is a problem that I find with the Linke in particular, because when it suits them, they will do something for the migrants, and when it doesn't, when it means that so that they can make it to the parliament, suddenly our rights are being gone. And I also find it important that, as you mentioned, the working class is migrant, but also the people who are working for Germany are also not only in Germany. And the German politics is not only influencing people in Germany, but all around the world. The call center people, the people who are delivering your pizzas, they don't have citizenship. People who are flying over here and taking care of rich ladies' kids. So it's important to not only focus on the leftist politics within Germany, and I think this is a problem in German politics, that whenever we are only focusing on what's happening in Germany, then of course the focus always shifts at the end to the German working class, to those who have rights. And I think MERA is until now has been really the only party that has started building these internationalist alliances, because without these alliances it will always go back to these national rights. And this is a huge problem, and I also find that in the leftist organizations as well, that they are still very much focusing like on in Germany and on German people, and migrants are like, oh great, we also have migrants, but we see that the strongest movement for Palestine actually came from the migrant networks, the migrant organizations, those that actually didn't have a citizenship right. And so I personally am sick of us being sort of used as the tokens whenever we are good for their votes, and then are like tossed away when they're not. So this is the reason I come from Turkey, a country where we had to vote for the lesser evil for like 20 years, and I have news, it does not change a thing. So often the biggest change actually came from supporting the more radical ones and making the small ones stronger, I have to say, and then they put them in jail, but you
Sorry, maybe it's a stupid question, but what is your objective critic on BSV from all of you? And I think the rising wave of AfD, because it's a populistic party that have really easy answer on difficult questions. So why cannot the left people speak to the normal people or less educated people? I mean, in Germany there is an education problem anyway, but why cannot the left speak to the people in their easy language?
Someone in the back over there had a question that has their hand up. And then you can go after. You can go after. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm Rosa, I'm from SVU, Socialism from Below, and I just wanted to add multiple things. So, yeah, the question of the working class is a very difficult one, because especially in academic leftist circles, it is always seen as like a subject, it's always dehumanized, it's always not really viewed as something. Yeah, I mean, like even the word like revolutionary subject is very, is a big misconception because like not every working class person is like a nice person, as Ramsis says. Like there are many assholes, but if we want to reach them, we have to talk with them and just sit in our circles and like be talking about them won't change anything. So we have to address it and we have to go there, but yeah, okay. And then there's another thing. I think for me, when election day will come, I don't think the most important choice that I will make is the thing that I will cross on this sheet of paper. It will be more like, I don't know, a campaign or like a political group I will contact. It will be a book that I will choose to read, but it won't be like my biggest choice to cross something. And I think we have to really remember that like getting organized and actually taking action will change way more than to like do democracy for like 30 seconds every 4 years will change anything. Like we have to do democracy every single day and take action.
Yes.
Back.
Oh, it's because of the box.
Yeah, just yeah. No. Come here. You can come here too.
Hi. Yeah, my name is Shireen. I'm also organized with Ramsi. I was also a member of the Linke recently, and yeah, I chose to speak because I'm actually part of the group that the first speaker has been talking about. I was organized within the Linke in Leipzig. And I was also a member, like long-standing member of the Linke SDS, the student organization, together with Ramsis. And yeah, after October 7th, it was the Linke Saxony, right, that asked to basically the Interior Ministry to abolish my group. So I was in this contradiction, and I think basically, in hindsight, it's something that revolutionaries within the Linke will always find themselves. It's not particularly special. It's basically the means you choose to fight for a better world, right? And for me, obviously, with Ramsis' banishment and also with my position within the Linke, because yeah, I was told I was next, right? But yeah, anyway, I just want to say that, like, in this case, it's a bit of a struggle to have somebody like Anton, Daniel Anton, sit here, because, like, if somebody asked me, like, like, he would be among the 3 most Palestine solidarity people, like, German-wide, that I know, and I've known him for quite a while. So, I think when we talk about the Linke, it's particularly important to recognize that there are like differences within the different circles within the cities, and I wouldn't say like I would choose right to vote within my circle for the Linke. Like I wouldn't, because I would choose to vote for somebody who's like inherently Zionist, who stood silent basically during the anti-Semitism resolution when it came after my emotions. But then I remember, right, like a couple of years ago, a Palestinian friend of mine was facing deportation, a Palestinian Syrian. And it was one of the most Zionist, leftist politicians within Saxony who stood up and who stopped this deportation. And this is basically one of the examples that I think of. We live in times where CDU, AfD, etc., everybody wants to deport migrants. Like, whether it being like people like myself, second generation with German passport, or first generation, it doesn't matter. And so yeah, I want to rest my case with, I think it's these hard questions that we have to ask ourselves, because these are the times we are facing huge waves of deportations soon. And if it came, to my Palestine solidarity and my comrades in Leipzig as well, I would definitely, choose Mero I'm 25.
Yeah.
So,
It's like the year
No, I was like, I'm so used to say 21, so I think I'm 21. So when it came to this AlHamra, I think in such a young, it's at this young state and the times we are facing, I would still choose Die Linke, even though I know the day of the elections I will stand like in front of the paper and do my crosses and cry secretly because yeah, I'm not faced with a candidate like, for example, Ferhat, but with someone that wants to attack me, but is in the end going to stand up for my people, right? When it comes to facing deportations and racism, so these are the times we live in, yeah. Which is why I choose to organize myself in a revolutionary organization, so I don't have to do election campaigns.
Thank you. Then I will give it to the speakers to respond.
Yeah, what more is there to add? Stupidly enough, I did my closing remarks in the round before, I think. But still, there was this one question about BSV. I'm not part of the group within Die Linke who says that all of the contents of what Sarah Wagenknecht and people around her said were false. Especially when it comes to Palestine, but also on other issues. But still, I would say that is the main problem that BSV poses for me, just a national chauvinistic party. Instead of an international bourgeoisie, they want to change that for a German bourgeoisie, which they think for whatever reason is somehow better. And that goes along, of course, with the racist rhetoric, and that's a problem. I would also say that compared to Linke, for example, there is definitely no party building from below in any way in BSV. That was always the problem of Sarah Wagenknecht, and that everything depended on her as a person. And I think that's a problem in the running election campaign. They don't get mentioned that much at all. They don't have anything on their feet because they have a very strict membership policy, and so they don't build up anything. So yeah, that would be my stance on this thing.
Yes, I tried to make notes to the questions that came in. Yeah, basically seconding what you said on BSV. They lack party building. They're insanely racist in their rhetorics, and it's sad, or like it's very unfortunate how, because what I said before is like you can see a lot of people who are actually or who describe themselves as left, or who describe themselves, let's say now liberal, not in the sense of the party, but just in their mindset, you know, that they want freedom, rights, and political rights to be established, moving to BSV because they think that because they have, for instance, a strong stance on Palestine right now, or a strong stance on peace, this must mean that they overall have a strong stance on these things. And I have to really agree with that they don't, and I almost would say that they're using Palestine for votes. The reason why I'm saying that is because, as we said, like their anti-immigration policies are inherently racist. It's really inherently racist also against Arabs and Muslim communities. And I cannot understand, or it really lacks for me logic how you can be inherently racist against people, and or like I have to turn it the other way around. How you can be pro-Palestine and then be so racist against migrants and against and against Arabs, especially because I mean, Palestinians are also migrants here. They're refugees here. They're the biggest community here in Berlin. And so what I've seen also the short moments where we interacted with them was very opportunistic and very calculated and was not focused on coalition building, building a party. They also reduced their memberships a lot in their party. So yeah, not talking too much about BSV maybe. Why does left make it so complicated? I think that comes also with academics, theorizing until the end of it, because there's like so much to say and so much to see. I think theory is important, but the moment it doesn't become practical, I don't care about the theory anymore. Coming from someone who herself has a research master in social movements and everything, and who dealt with all the theory, but then saw, well, it's nice if we talk about theory, if we don't put it into practice, if we don't sit on the streets, if we don't resist. What is it worth if I can explain to you, in theory, what decolonialism is, if I don't practice it? So we're definitely getting lost there. It's also, I feel like, a tactic often to look at us, and I saw that actually being on a panel a few days ago, actually last week, where Ferhat was on a panel. He was arguing against BSV, and it was about the topic on racism. And Ferhat brought very great arguments. He brought very concrete solutions. He said, well, we need a representative that can deal with these things, like anti-rassismusberatung, especially for Muslim people. Like, he gave like very, very, very concrete solutions, and the first thing that the person from BSV said, oh yeah, but it's not that easy, it's so complicated. And then they went on in like how racism is different in the city than on the countryside, and people are scared, and and he kind of like went on this whole speech. And I think that's also something that what is often done with left positions is like, so where it's like, oh, we're against the state. Oh yeah, how are you going to do that? Like, you want to just dissolve all states? Like, what are we going to do? Like, we get very quickly dragged into diluting our arguments because we get attacked for the radical stances that we have. And I think first of all, it's our obligation to make things easier and more accessible, like also something that was said before, right? That we need to be able to speak clearly and to people who we want to reach. But also to not get that unsettled quickly also, I feel like, by attacks. Stand to what we believe in, and make it very clear of what is possible, because I feel like there's also a lot of like, oh, this is all not possible, these are all utopias, and a lot of them are, but it's also we're often also told it's also often people often pretend like all of these things is not possible because they don't want it to be. So just on that. I wanted to say two more final things about political participation, which was already mentioned a lot. And a lot of practical things were also already mentioned, supporting groups, also joining left parties like MERA, or also, for instance, like, I don't know if Haussozialismus von Unten does it, if you take membership fees, but these things are really crucial for these groups. Like, it's really, like, if you join a group, and even €1, it counts so much. So these kinds of things are really, really important. People in here who are Germans or Europeans with passports, use your privileges. You have them, use them. You should be the ones standing in the front lines on Palestine demonstrations. You should be the ones who are speaking up in your organizations, in your companies. Don't hide behind the migrant who then claims for their rights, and you're like, yeah, me too. No, be the first one who says something, because you should also be offended for these things. And yeah, as already said, was practiced radical democracy, boycotts, strikes, like, engage in these things. DM25 is, for instance, next week part of the strike. We're one of the organizations that is co-organizing with them. Also for us, the first time, should have come earlier for sure. It's not because there was like that we didn't see a point in it, but we're a small party, so we're also organizing amongst ourselves, or trying to organize ourselves. But these things are important, and I wish we could have done it earlier. But now we're here, and now we're going to do it next week. But this also comes with a certain mindset change, and it's what was said by our friend of the Left Berlin, and by many, many other people before. It's the day before the election, it's the day after the election, and it's also holding people accountable. We accept that politicians blatantly lie into our faces, they're being corrupt, and we accept that they're still there. They're abusing their powers constantly, over and over again. They're not fulfilling any of the promises that they put into coalition agreements. And we just accept that as normal. We think, okay, well, this is politics, that we're just being lied to, that people are being corrupt. we need to hold people accountable for this. And I think that also comes mostly outside, first of all, of Parliament, mass mobilization, mass disengagement, boycotting strikes, pushing also for policy changes, I think, on that level. But this is, I think, also, yeah, I can just really add to that point is like, if there's one thing that, the most important thing I feel like that people should take away from this is vote left for sure, but also this is your, if this is your first day of activism, then it's today. It's not when you're gonna vote, when you're gonna set your cross, but it's today. And there is so much more that we can do besides putting a cross down. Voting by a cross every 4 years, that is an illusion of democratic participation. And then finally, strategically voting Die Linke, I mean, we already said it, it's, I empathize with the fear of fascism here. I do think that it's a bit short-sighted because I feel like we have this already for years. But if we say that, oh, but the person I know here is going to get deported if I don't vote for this party or something like that, and then we're not being truly or not showing internationalist solidarity. And in order to break this chain, we need to start doing that. We need to, and it was so beautifully said by Eshigu before, it's workers' rights is not just about the workers here. We have a globalized system. It's about people in sweatshops. It's about people in call centers. It's us outsourcing our work somewhere else. It's people in the DRC working in mines. This is also all workers' rights, and we have a responsibility here to include them into our solidarity, to include them into our activism, and to include them into our politics. And I think it's really, really important to break this nationalist focus. Like we really need to build structures. Diem and Mera 25 in a way is one way of doing this, but everyone needs to build structures where we really expand ourselves into this internationalist mindset. What we do here, our politics here matters, and it matters to the people outside of this country a lot. And we need to find ways of including them, either into our structures, into our systems, or with their voices. So yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, so first of all, I think in order to dig deeper beyond the surface, we need to ask the question, where does the racism of BSW come from and derive from? I think it's also the point that it's focused on Parliament as well, actually. Because it tries to represent also in this a certain section of the German capitalist class that sees more potential in a collaboration with Russia and other forces. But also in its way of its so-called internationalism, which is not an internationalism, because it's a national idea they follow. It is not a revolutionary internationalist approach or anything. It doesn't really focus on that, but it's thinking from a German capitalist perspective, basically. And the focus on national capital is also what makes it bring white workers up against migrant workers, both German white workers against the other. So this is the point. It's also not anti-imperialist. It stems from a certain pacifist viewpoint in certain questions, yeah, but from an abstract level. It also doesn't stand with the Palestinian resistance, and it sure as hell doesn't do anything to actively build up the Palestine solidarity movement in Germany. It also doesn't have the members on the ground to do that, and for us, it doesn't really make sense to get involved with it if there's not a base of party members that are active. Because it's not a real party in that sense, where you have a lot of local sections and so on, where you can work with them on a practical level. This is how we win over people for the right perspective and direction, I think. This is not possible in that case. And then, of course, their actions on the refugee question are horrible in their collaboration with the AfD, let's bluntly state it. And it's very important to organize practical solidarity with refugees facing deportations in the upcoming months and so on. I heard today Palestinians were being deported here in Berlin. Yeah, and some like pro-refugee groups were organizing resistance. And I think we need to get involved in that, be part of it, practically. And I think there are way more Germans who are against deportations than we might think. For example, there was a very small community and a very small town where I think Colombian refugees should have been deported. And they were finding thousands of signatures of the neighborhoods supporting them and not wanting them to be deported. Because many Germans have a colleague, have a neighbor, and so on, that has a migrant background. And they do not want them to be deported, where we can also involve more people into politics, the migrants and the non-migrants as well. And I think that's very important also for a revolutionary organization, that we do not make identity a precondition. People of different identities should be welcome, should be part of it. And of course, a membership fee plays a certain role because it also decides on the way we can operate politically, what material we can have, how we can build up, and so on. But it's very important not to take anything from companies or anything like that, because you make yourself dependent on them. And also, I think, so for us, our policy is, for example, if someone cannot pay a fee like that or donation, this is also fine. We should differentiate how are the living standards of a person. Is it a student? Does the person have a family? Is he employed or unemployed, and so on? It should play a role, yeah. And the most important part is to become active and to share the same political revolutionary goal. And also there we are in contact with international sections of our international socialist tendency in Nigeria, in South Korea, in different parts of the world. And I think it's very important to be internationals, to learn also from the experiences, to learn from the comrades, for example, in South Korea, and how they stopped the president there supporting a military coup on the streets by mass mobilizations, by workers' strikes and union action. I think that's very important. And when it comes to Germany now, the next aim will be to involve as many people as we can and to build clarity on the question that our enemy doesn't come in refugee boats. Our enemy comes in suits and tells us that our enemy comes in refugee boats. And we have to make that very, very clear these days and fight with everyone who's on the same page with us on these questions. Let's get organized, let's get active, and show that solidarity is international, solidarity is key, and we have to keep on fighting. Don't lose hope.
Thank you very much. I think that was a great wrap up from all of the speakers. I want to thank everyone so much for being here. Big applause to all three speakers for being here. I also really want to thank Yasmin here. Thank you.
And Jessica, thank you.
And in general, all the people from the Left Berlin, Javi, Murat, Phil, Jen, everyone who showed up and who did work behind the scenes, thank you so much. Don't forget to buy something from AlHamra if you can, or maybe come back here in the future. They're really great, they're really nice. We also have a donations jar at the door. If you want to donate, we would like to buy more stickers, which we give away for free, but they're not for free to make. And I hope to see you all at future events, and don't forget to go out and organize and go out to vote.
Can I add one more thing before you all leave? We also have a Gaza Comité stand in the back. Somebody's waving, and we're collecting signatures to hand into the Bundestag to stop weapons sales to Israel. So please also go and sign it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much also.